Okay, there we are. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're at here. This is Feel the Beat with DJB. Thank you for tuning in today. To Feel the Beat, we're on Jess FM. We are on DJB Entertainment, YouTube, and Twitch. I'm DJB. Brent is my name, and my special guest live from New Jersey is Scott Schiaffo, an actor, writer, musician, you name it. That is you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, DJB. It's nice to be here, man.
So, what's up? You've been up to a lot of things lately, but we'll talk a little bit about the past. First of all, you were in Clerks. That's where you got your entertainment debut and start, I guess you could say. What was Clerks? Those that are not familiar with it.
Well, I was very fortunate to be cast in a role that if you weren't one of the leads in that film, the Chuli's Gum Guy part was a real sort of cherry role for a character actor because the way it was written, it really stands out. The scene stands out. It's right in the beginning of the film, very memorable. And for a character actor, was like the ultimate sort of role. So I felt very fortunate to have that role. Like I say, if you weren't one of the leads, that was one of the cherry roles to get as a supporting player. And back then, early 90s, long before cell phones and internet, you got your acting auditions through trade papers. And I saw the ad, and it was about an hour and a half from where I live because I'm up northern New Jersey, and all those guys, Kevin Smith and all those folks that were part of the film, they were down south by the shore, Leonardo. So it was about an hour and 45-minute drive one way. But back then, there weren't, an indie film being shot in New Jersey was not at all that common. You usually had to either travel to New York or sometimes you'd get a gig and you'd have to travel way out west. But I said, wow, New Jersey, I have got to get to this audition. And I'm very fortunate. He liked my audition, called me back, read from the script, and then the rest as View Askew Clerks history.
Oh, right on. And wasn't it made for like $27,000 or something? Didn't have that.
Yeah, there's a lot of figures have been sort of bandied around the web for years. 24,000, 27,000, somewhere in that range. He maxed out credit cards, sold off his comic book collection. It really was a sort of novel thing at the time, and it showed so much heart and passion Kevin had to do this, and that's one of the things I remember most when I first met him. I'm older than a bunch of those guys by a handful of years, and I thought, wow, this young man is really wise, funny, and he has the energy of and the passion of a guy that I feel like we're in the right hands, and it was so exciting.
Yeah, that's cool to be a part of something like that. But Clerks wasn't your only film role. You were in The Garden State with Selma Blair, The Garden State with Michael DiLorenzo, The Broccoli Theory with Selma Blair, and Vulgar, I believe it is, with Ethan Suplee, right?
Right. Yeah. Clerks definitely was the thing that kicked the door open for all of us who were part of that film. It opened up the door to other possibilities. And, the industry is extremely, it's tough. Bottom line, it's tough. So we now all had a thing that when casting people called you in, they were a little bit aware of what you could do and what you have done, which is a beautiful thing for an actor as you're getting along, because now you're not just anonymous. You're not part of the whole cattle call. You have a little bit of a calling card. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Michael DiLorenzo, sweetest guy ever. He was quite a big star at the time we shot, because in the mid-'90s, New York Undercover was one of the biggest shows on television, and he was one of the leads, right. Detective Torres, and he was my scene partner through most of that movie. So I was in my glory, and he was just a real sweetheart of a guy for a guy who had that much sort of celebrity cachet at that time. Selma Blair, that's a funny story with her because I did not get to work with her in the scenes I was in that particular film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't actually till years later when when her career really began to take off that I even saw on the IMDb, wow, she was one of the featured people in the film, but we didn't get to work together at the time. And it's like kind of fun and cool that we're both in a film together. And that's her very first film credit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that was exciting. And, Vulgar was another film that was put together by Kevin Smith and his folks, Brian Johnson from Comic Book Men. He wrote and directed Vulgar, and Brian O'Halloran was the lead in that. So I got to work with those guys again, and that film caused a pretty big stir. Very controversial film. That's the kind of film that people either really like or really don't like because it's got some brutalness in it. But so man, I just feel very blessed to have been part of the Clerks, which opened the door to so many other things.
Yeah, that's cool. And you were the lead in the thriller Linger? Is that Linger?
Yes, Linger. Writer-director Tom Zanka. I don't even know where to begin with that one because that's like a personal fave. I was getting cast usually as a loud maniac, somebody who was really off center and whatnot. But this was a chance to play a very down to earth, very somber, small town detective. And that's one of the films I also got to do the score in. And it's my personal favorite as far as the overall tone of the movie, the character that I got to play. It was nice to get a chance, shot at being one of the lead characters. And although it's an indie, it's on Amazon and it did really well on the festival circuit. It's a personal highlight and a real fave.
So you grew up in Passaic, New Jersey.
Correct.
So as a young guy, did you want to pursue entertainment, or did you have other aspirations when you were growing up?
No, for as long as I can remember. I mean, my earliest memories are music. Music really is my first passion. I caught the acting bug at the tail end of high school and into college, but music's been a passion since I was old enough to put the needle on the record. And I had a very supportive mother. I was raised by a really strong single mother, and she really supported my interest in music and got me a guitar and got me lessons. And once I started playing the guitar, it became an obsession. From the age 13 to probably 26, if I were awake, there was a guitar in my hands. So music was a first passion.
Yeah,
but acting.
Thank those moms, huh?
Yeah, no, I wanted drums, and we lived in a small apartment. Excuse me.
No worries.
Got the burp bug. That's not good. Yeah, I wanted drums because of Dino Danelli, the drummer from the Young Rascals. Yeah. I came up in the 60s and 70s. And the Beatles, the Stones, Zeppelin, the Who, and the Young Rascals were my guys. And Dino was just the coolest guy ever. When you saw him on the album cover with that red sparkly Ludwig drum set, but drums weren't going to happen. And I got a guitar, and I'm thankful that I did because I love the guitar. I love that led to piano. And so it was very early for music. Acting didn't start happening until late high school, early college years. But once I caught that bug, that was a really serious bug. I mean, as much as I love music and still do, when it came to what I was hoping to break through professionally with was a character actor. Because with music, I knew I could always do what I want to do with music and not have to necessarily be a recording artist or in some, popular rock band, which of course is a beautiful thought and a fantasy. But by my early 20s, I wanted the acting to be prominent, and I always knew I'd somehow be able to bring the music into it. And I've been very fortunate, as we spoke earlier, that I've gotten the chance to score a number of the films I've been a part of. So
Yeah, that is a nice privilege too. That's really cool. So yeah, music is your first love. So you actually released a CD too, right?
I do. I have a couple of releases that I'm very proud of. The Shoestring Serenade. What that is that's a collection of film music I did over the course of 10 or 15 so years in indie films. And what that is, the majority of the proceeds go to an animal charity rescue that I'm with. That instrumental music that was used in a myriad of films is on that CD. And when you buy that CD, it's royalty free. So if you want to use that music in your movie or in your podcast or whatever you might, all you have to do is give credit, and there's no royalties to worry about. So I thought that was a nice way to spin how to release a record, because things have changed so much in the music business. And the Jewel Carey Band is another record I'm very, very proud of and fond of. Singer-songwriter Jewel Carey. We did a record together where I got to produce and play, and it's classic rock and roll, old school classic rock and roll, and she's written a ton of great songs. So again, I feel very fortunate to have had that opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you play instruments. Like, what instruments all do you play?
Well, guitar is the number one.
Yeah.
After guitar, it would probably be keyboards, then bass, and harmonica. So I was able to get, I want to say, astute enough on most of those instruments to be a one-stop shop when I would produce with people in the studio. If they didn't have a band, especially singer-songwriters, I was able to arrange and play all the parts. And funny, we would actually, on the Jewel Carey album, because we didn't want it to look, I think there's nothing worse than seeing somebody who's credited just like all these times. We actually made up fun names for other people that were in the band. The keyboard player and, was Dusty Rhodes. And, it was just really her and I, but we made up names for the other players, and that was fun. But yeah, music is a real blessing too for anybody who, I know you're a musician, and music is a blessing.
Yeah. And I think it, brings people together because it, attacks, or I shouldn't say attacks, but it appeals to your emotion more, right, than anything else. And I think, especially in this era when there's so many divisions, like, even in the States with the election and all what's dividing you there, and us in Canada, there's that for that to be restricted, live concerts and music, it brings people together, and, it's just an amazing experience.
That's very true. Music is certainly the universal language. And I know that Martin Scorsese has said this in the past. I've read a quote from him, but he's a music lover. He feels that music is the is the purest art, because there's nothing between the listener and the music. It's in it's in the air. And I guess in that way, it's not tainted. It can't. You have to hear it. All you have to do is listen, and then it will give you a visceral impact on your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And there's nothing like a beautiful old melody or a song that you grew up with. You hear it, it takes you back in time.
Yeah, I remember a famous musician one time on an interview saying there's nothing like a live concert and the roar of the crowd, but also when that crowd is singing your songs back to you. And, it can be a different language. They can be Japanese and singing it back to you in English, and they don't know English. He said, there's nothing like that feeling at all. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can only fathom that. That's a real mind blower. It kind of like, the only thing I can equate it to is it's a real mind blower for me when I travel around, and especially at the conventions. And now many generations of people have embraced Clerks, and I see people my age with their family, and the teenage son is also a big Clerks fan, and that, to me, that blows my mind too.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. We were talking a little bit earlier before we went live, and you were mentioning about a video con, a video comment. Is that a
Yes,
comic con? Or what is that about?
Wizard World. Yes, Wizard
Okay.
World. I just found out about it over the last couple of days. In February 20th is a Saturday. That's the live panel. And people, please, if you have interest, you could check my social media because we're posting and putting up all the links. But it's Wizard World Virtual. February 20th is the Clerks panel, and then a week later are the one-on-one chats and discussions. And you could also get autographed memorabilia through Wizard World for the event. So I'm really excited about that because COVID has really pummeled the convention world. It's been about a year and a half, since I've gotten to do a convention, because obviously it's not safe. Like you said, there's no more big crowds or a no-no. So now they're doing them virtually, which is kind of fun. I've done a
Yeah,
few of them.
yeah, it's a bit of a different concept, and people would have to get used to it because that's totally something new, right? Being able to do that, so but at least you can still connect. That's good.
Right. It is. It's the I did one a few months ago with GalaxyCon, and what they do wrap it up in a way where it's as personal as it could possibly be, being virtual, but not unlike Cameo. Folks can have a quick shout out recorded message, or they could do their 2 minute or 2 to 5 minute one-on-one interaction, record it and have that. And then you could also have memorabilia. You could send in your poster to Wizard World. I believe they're doing that. I mean, I know the last con did, or your DVD jacket, and then they send it around to all of us. We sign it, and then so it's as close as you can get to what a convention experience was before COVID.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that they're doing that. That's awesome. So you've been a part of those before? You said
I'm sorry.
You've been a part of those before?
Yeah, well, of course they're new because of COVID. I did. Galaxy had a virtual con, GalaxyCon, last. Gosh, my memory is not what it used to be. Last fall, GalaxyCon did a virtual event with us, and it was a lot of fun and quite successful for them as well.
Yeah.
And I had done one other with George Romero, who's George C. Romero, or George Romero's son. He runs a amazing thing called the Indie Brigade, and we do podcasts on there. And he had a really wonderful virtual con too. That was for charity, so that was nice.
Oh, that's really cool. Really cool. So you're a busy guy. You got your hands in lots of things, and that. What do you do, to kind of unwind? Say away from music. Are you a sports fan? Do you like to sit and just read, or what do you do?
You just nailed it. I never was a sports guy ever. I never was drawn to sports, but I do love to read. And COVID has been a great excuse to do a lot of reading. So I've read probably at this point between 10 and 15 musician and actor bios or autobiographies. And I'm having a really great time with that because I get a lot of enjoyment out of reading the stories and the lives of the people who so affected my life. The Keith Richards book was a mind blower. I read that a couple of times. I just got finished with Sebastian Bach's book. I read Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers book. Of course, I like Mark Maron. He's a fave. He's a little different than the other guys, but John Cryer from Pretty in Pink and Two and a Half Men. I read his book.
Oh, cool.
Steve Gorman, the drummer from the Black Crowes, his book was phenomenal. So, yeah, reading, and I'm glad. One thing about COVID that was a positive is it really got me back to reading.
Yeah. Yeah. For a lot of people, you know, they were so busy and stuff, and they could sit and, you know, just read tons of books. And you're an author too. That's really cool. You did a collection of poetry, right?
That's correct. It's called Vicious Dogs Attack Me and Sleepless Nights of Summer. It's a pretty crazy title, but it is a collection of poetry and short stories that were written during a time when I was battling pretty heavily with alcohol and drug addiction. So that's the nature of the material. It's somebody who's really lost in that world. And it doesn't promote the lifestyle, and it certainly doesn't apologize for the lifestyle. It's sort of like a funky alcoholic junkie journal, if you will.
Yeah.
And I've been sober from alcohol now 14 years.
That's excellent.
which is a blessing, because I really had it bad. You know, there was a time in my life where people were just sort of waiting for that phone call. That, you know, he finally did it. He's gone, because I was a blackout drinker and also addicted to just about every drug you can think of. But I'm very fortunate in that the book sort of was never intended to be a book about recovery or sobriety or becoming clean from addictions. It was just a collection of writing that was done while I was lost in that state. But one really beautiful thing about the book that I never saw coming was the folks who did, you know, it's an acquired taste. It's not something for everybody, but a lot of people who read it got back to me and felt inspired because they had a friend who was an alcoholic, and it sort of gave them a little hope that maybe people can change and people can beat alcoholism and drug addiction. And although I like to sort of look back on some of those times now, and I pick out some funny things, but there's nothing funny about alcoholism and drug addiction, and it really does a number on family and friends. Alcoholics and drug addicts take hostages. You know, if you have a friend or a family member who's suffering, you're going to get sucked into their hurricane in some way or another. So it's a horrible, horrible thing, and it breaks my heart for the people who do suffer with it. But I felt fortunate that the book somehow clicked with certain people where they found hope in the book. And I just did the audio book. It's on Audible. Another thing lockdown did was give me the time to sit and do the audio book.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's both formats is really great. That's great. And that would be a really good book for those that are going through that. As you said, you know, you didn't mean it for that to be the case, but you know, it can affect people in various ways. You never know. So that's great that you did that. Good for you.
Right.
And congratulations on being sober for 14 years. And that's awesome. Because that's hard to overcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a blessing. And so many factors went into what happened, because I was sure I was going to die from it, and I didn't really care at the end. That's what alcoholism and drug addiction sort of does to you. But I ended up with a very severe heart condition. And wow. It was so serious in 2006 that from 2006 to 2010, I was truly like a full-time heart patient. I was in and out of the hospital having some kind of procedure every 3 or 4 months for a couple of years. So alcohol was completely taken out of the picture, as were illicit substances. And then when I thankfully made it through all the heart stuff, it just dawned on myself and my significant other that I haven't had a drop of alcohol at that point, it was 3 years, which was the longest ever in my adult life. But the real miracle was I was no longer attracted to it, which makes staying stopped, so much easier, because it's heartbreaking when you're in the midst of, that addiction, and you're just driven to continue no matter how bad it gets. I would try to get sober and clean, and then a couple of weeks into it, I would get so miserable without alcohol that I didn't care. I said, I'm miserable with it. I'm miserable without it. I always would go back to being miserable with it. So it's a blessing to have that obsession be removed. And again, I feel there was some kind of higher power, divine intervention that helped that along. I'm not the most religious man, but I believe in being spiritual, and that heart trouble really saved my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how things can work out like that. Bad things can actually work out to be a positive in the long run. And that's good. Yeah, for sure. Well, Scott, it's been a complete privilege having you on live here on DJB Entertainment and Jess FM. Um, Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. I hope we can stay in touch, and any projects that you have in the future, we can talk about and whatever. What do you have in the works? Anything major in the works going forward?
Well, I was very fortunate over the course of COVID so far that, as bizarre as it is, I was still getting some acting gigs that were able to be shot virtually. There's a thing that was released on YouTube by a young filmmaker named Chris Pierre Domenico. It's a really hilarious sort of spoof of, it's called Jesus versus Satan, the rise of the zombies. So you could see how crazy that is. But it's a comedy. And he was able to shoot it where we shot our parts virtually. I used my own digital camera to shoot my parts, because the majority of the film, people are just speaking to one another through cell phones and through these type of apps. So he created a piece that was able to be produced where most of the people were in lockdown. Another thing called The Deep State by Tom Zanka, which is a very serious drama series. That was shot throughout this whole mess, and I also did the score. Wit's End, a feature film by my good friend David Madison, where we shot our scenes long before COVID, but he did the post-production in COVID, and I did the score, and that got released. So 2020, as terrible as it was being locked in, and I still somehow managed to have some projects be released and find an audience, and it was exciting. I just feel really blessed.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So you got lots going forward and lots that you've done, and that's a great repertoire to have and keeping you busy in that. So where can people find the works that you've done? Do you have a website or Facebook, or what?
I do. I have a website, scottschiaffo.com, which is basically a page that will link you to all of the social media, link you to where you can get merch very reasonably priced, and the proceeds go to the Angels of Animal charity. Excellent. That's on there. So if scottschiaffo.com leads you to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, my Amazon store, where the proceeds go to the animal rescue. So please, folks, if you're like-minded and you want to come along for the ride, everybody's welcome. Please follow me on social media. And I just want to say thank you, DJB, and everybody who has supported me. I'm very blessed.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. And, I like to support fellow entertainers and that who, are trying to make a difference in that. And that's awesome. And you have done that, and that's great. And like I said, thank you for taking time out of your busy Saturday for coming on my show. Appreciate that very much. And thank everyone for watching. This will be posted on DJB Entertainment YouTube. It's shot live there right now, and on DJB Entertainment Twitch. And a little bit later, I'll post it on my DJB Entertainment Facebook page and Jess FM Facebook page. You can go there later on and watch them as well. So again, Scott, thank you so much. It has been a great privilege, and continued success to you, and congratulations on all you've accomplished so far.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure. You have a great day.
You as well.